almost like a million times because I messed up all the time. I've changed up the region that I'm gonna be from. My character's gonna be from the Alola region because I know that region way better than any other region. So let's get on with it. Boom, boom, boom. Alright, let's get started. So it starts off with a 4-year-old child named Christian in the forest walking around, and Professor Oak's Pokemon camp, and Professor Kakui's Pokemon camp. Yeah, I know that doesn't exist. It could exist. I don't know. He's running around with his friend Hao, and him and his friend Hao are walking around. They leave Professor Kakui to go walk around. Out of nowhere, they're both attacked by a Rhyhorn. No, they're both attacked out of nowhere by an Alolan Persian. It's running at them, going to slice them, but out of nowhere, a Pokemon who's yellow, black, and blue punches it in the face, and then Thunder punches it. It's a Zeraora. It's a mysterious Pokemon called Zeraora, wandering around. It picks them up and sends them right back to where they were. And Christian is like, I want to catch it. And Hao's like, what? You want to catch it? He's like, yeah, I do. You're one crazy person. And I was like, really? He was like, really? For wanting to catch that such a cool Pokemon. Whatever. After a 5-year time skip, because they're about 4 right now, which after a 6-year time skip, they're both 10 years old. They meet Professor Kakui for their starters. Christian chooses... Alright, this is a tough decision to choose either Rowlet or Incineroar. But I've made my decision. Incineroar! Now, don't get me wrong, I love Rowlet. If I do a remastered, I'll choose Rowlet. So basically they would win. So Christian would get his Pokemon, which is Litten. Hao chooses Rowlet. And Kakui says, I'll take this Popplio into my lead. So first Hao wants to do his battle. Christian says, alright Litten, let's go. Out of nowhere, they throw their Pokeballs out. And Litten is scaring Rowlet. He's like, Woo! I do a really good Rowlet impression. Woo! Woo! It's pretty easy, actually. So, and Rowlet starts glowing blue, and then it goes down. He's like, what the? Out of nowhere, Kakui says, whoa! It's a secret ability, Litten. Its hidden ability is Intimidate. It intimidates opponents, lowering their attack. Hao goes, oh, come on! Now we're at a giant disadvantage, and he says, Litten, Ember! And then Hao says, use Leaf Edge! They clash, but Ember is on top. Out of nowhere, Christian says, scratch! Litten scratches Rowlet, doing decent damage. Then Christian says, finish it off! Ember! Defeating it once and for all. Defeating the Rowlet. He's like, yay, we did it, Litten! Litten goes, nah! So basically, next thing would happen is they'd go on the adventure, blah 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 blah, and they end up in the Pokemon Center. Now I'm gonna do a skip. I don't really want to do that battle. Okay, I'm gonna do this. So Christian is walking up to go meet the Kahuna, but he ain't there. So he goes up to the ruins of wherever the Tapu Koko thing is. Then he finds a girl named Lily with a Cosmog named Nebby walking around and going on a bridge, and she's like, Nebby, watch out! So Christian says, Litten, go! Nyah! And she's like, who are you? And he's like, I'm here to and he's like, wait a minute, you're the girl from that magazine! And she's like, oh, I guess I'm kind of famous. No, you're just from that magazine. The one from Aether Paradise. And she's like, oh. And out of nowhere, Litten rushes over to grab Cosmog. It grabs it, and then Christian walks over to Litten just goes, but then the thing starts cracking. Christian jumps down with his Litten in his arms, with Cosmog, out of nowhere. Tapu Koko comes and saves them and gives Christian the Z ring and says, and just goes, go, 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 go. Basically, that's it for now. So Christian would go to a Pokemon Center, and a guy in an orange and blue shirt is there. He's like, hello? He's like, I'm pretty sure my gift was supposed to be here. Someone sent me, my friend or something sent me a birthday gift. He says, so he goes up and says, hello, do you have a package for me? He says, yeah, I do, kid. Here you go. It's a Pokeball. Open it. He sends out the Pokeball, and out of nowhere, a Rockruff comes out. Rockruff! Its moves are Fire Fang, Tackle, and Leer. And he's like, cool, Fire Fang, Tackle, and Leer. That's a good moveset. Moving on to the Pokemon School, that's not really important to the canonicity. This is based off the games, not the anime. Because the games are way better, in my opinion. So, basically, Christian has now 2 Pokemon still on his, and then he heads to the Pokemon school. They say he's out there in the 10-year, this is the 10-year-old class. They're going for one day to test out how Pokemon school goes. He says, so when they introduce themselves, Hal says, hi, I'm Hal. I'm the Kahuna's grandson. And this is my partner Rowlet. And my dream is to become the best Pokemon trainer ever. Lily says, hi, I'm Lily. And this is my partner Nebby. I'm kidding, Lily can't show Nebby. But Lily's a little bit more open this time. So Lily is gonna say, this is Nebby. Nebby would say pew, 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 pew. And my dream is to, well, I don't really know what Lily's dream is because she never said it. I want to be a strong Pokemon trainer. And everyone in the class is like, alright, what's the kid in the hat's name? He's like, I'm Christian, and my dream is to catch Zeraora. And everyone's like, what? Zeraora? What's that? And he's like, Zeraora is an electric type Pokemon, electric and fighting type Pokemon who saved me and Hal's life from the lowland person trying to hurt us. It came and blitzed out of nowhere. And this is my partner Litten. Say hi, Litten. Yeah. So they go for a day, and that's basically it for the class. These 3 are like Brock, Misty, and Ash. That's what this trio was like. So immediately, Christian does a lot of training. His Litten is close to evolving, not really. Christian would go on to take on his first trial. Lily goes on, and Hal goes to train. Christian would jump up and do his trial. I'm kidding. He has to fight a Lima. He starts off and says, go, Rockruff! He'd say, Rockruff, Fire Fang! And it one-shots the young goose, and he's like, wow, you're pretty strong. But, by the way, that's a Lima. He'd say, alright, go, Smeargle! So Smeargle would be sent out, and they'd start battling. He'd say, wait, I messed that up. He doesn't have Fire Fang. He has Thunder Fang. He'd say, Rockruff, Thunder Fang, Rockruff. It hit it really, really nice. And then he'd say, Water Gun. He'd say, what the? And it knocks out Rockruff in 1 hit. He's like, 1 hit? And then he says, critical hits. Am I right? He says, alright, let's go! Yeah! Then he says, use Ember! Ugh. So Litten wins the battle after like 1 minute of battling. Christian finally picks up the dub. And he goes on to do his first trial. So basically, he would go and he'd fight Team Skull. Out of nowhere, they'd come and he'd win easily the battle. They'd come and help him. He'd defeat the final young goose. He'd get a little disc called Brick Break. He's like, cool. So then he goes and he heads to the trial. He picks up the Z Crystal, but then a giant Gumshoos comes. He's like, oh no! he jumps back and says, "Alright, Layton, let's go!" Now, Layton hits it with one ember, sending it back, hitting it a little harder, doing not a lot. And then the young goose says, and the young goose goes, "Ah!" I mean, it's Gumshoes. He goes, "Hyper Fang!" He does a Hyper Fang, hitting Layton really, really hard. He's like, "Shoot, that does a lot." He's like, "Here, Layton." Layton is healed. Then he says, "Ah!" and he calls for help. Out of nowhere, a young goose comes, and they both start hurting Layton a lot. "I can't send out Rockruff. It's not allowed in this trial. But if I don't, then Layton will be." Layton would start glowing blue. Actually, no. Layton would turn into a fiery aura, and he'd go, and he'd go and evolve into a Torracat. Out of nowhere, Layton would start glowing red and using a flame charge, ramming right into the young goose, knocking it out. Then it hit, and then it slapped the Gumshoes twice, sending it back. He's like, "Rotom-Dex, what is that?" Rotom-Dex says, "That was double kick and that was flame charge." He's like, "Cool, he learned brand new moves." And he says, "Come on, Layton, flame charge." Layton goes, and rams it into a wall and then says, "Double kick." It hits it twice, defeating the totem, getting his own Normalium Z. Now, he starts to train a lot of his Pokemon, training Rockruff. I'm going to give some levels. Rockruff is about level 17, Layton is about level 18, and that's all he really has. He doesn't have all his Pokemon. He'll be getting awesome Pokemon in the future. Out of nowhere, during his battle with Hala, Layton first match is Rockruff versus the awesomest Pokemon in the universe. I'm kidding, it's Machop. He'd say, "Thunderfang!" He'd paralyze it, also paralyzing it on that turn so it can't hit him. Then he says, "Thunderfang once more!" He says, "Ruff!" biting it, turn it even lower, defeating the Machop. Then the Makuhita would come. Trying to defeat it, he says, "Rockruff, Thunderfang!" Rockruff doesn't do a lot. Then he says, "Use Focus Energy!" He's like, "Oh no, he's preparing for a big hit. We have to knock it out right now." And he says, "Let's go, Rockruff!" He says, use Thunderfang." He's struggling. He's not thinking well. He's like, "No, what can I do?" And he says, "Thunderfang." Then he'd do it again, but it doesn't kill. It doesn't defeat. He says, "Use Arm Thrust." Rockruff would be knocked out. And he says, "Rockruff is unable to battle." He's like, "Rockruff, no!" Out of nowhere, he's ready to fight. He sends out his Torracat and says, "Torracat, I choose you!" And he says, "Let's go!" "Let's go, Layton! Flame charge!" And hits it with a flame charge, knocking him out immediately, giving it a speed boost. And he's like, "Oh yeah, let's go!" Then he puts on his Z-Ring and puts in the Z Crystal. And he's like, "Alright, Layton, you ready for this one?" Immediately he'd say, "Use flame charge!" And he sends out his Crabrawler, sending the Crabrawler flying up in the air. He says, "Double kick!" Not defeating it, but sending it down. Then he says, "Use circle throw!" When Torracat goes for another double kick, it's grabbed its two paws and then slammed behind it. He goes, "Yeah!" Then he says, "Shoot, there's nothing we can do." He says, "Scratch!" And it scratches but it doesn't do a lot. It's sent flying back with a power-up punch. And he says, "Shoot, what can I do?" And he's like, "That's what I can do." And he says, "Here we go, Torracat!" And then he does the Z move pose for Normalium Z. He puts his two arms together like this, and then he says, "Use breakneck, blitz. He goes, Toya Cat. Oh, boom, 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 boom. Defeating it once and for all. Winning him the battle. And he says, woohoo, let's go, let's go. Yeah, 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 let's go, Litten Rockruff. He uses a revive on Rockruff, bringing it back from its faint. He's like, yeah, Rockruff, we did it, yeah, yeah, Rockruff, we did it, yeah. And then he says, let's go, Litten, we did it. Now, moving on to this, now, how Christian and Lily all head to, things. But before that, they watched How, and How would easily pass with his Dartrix. How has a Dartrix, a Pichu, and something else. Really, I don't know. So basically, he'd be really, really good. So, one day, after a couple of days after How's trial, he sees some Team Yell grunts beating up a Riolu. Just keep on punching it and kicking it and hurting the Riolu. He says, Torracat, flame charge! Torracat hits them both, hits all the Team Skull members and sends them flying. And he says, Torracat, alright, Rockruff, you take care of them. He says, Ruff! And then he says, Rock Throw! And then he sends them flying out of the air. He sends the Team Skull grunts out of the area. He picks up the Riolu and says, alright, it's gonna be okay, little guy. And then he runs to the Pokemon Center. He says, excuse me, ma'am, Nurse Joy, please heal this one. And she says, what happened? He says, this Team Skull grunts were beating it up. And she's like, dang, those Team Skull! So she heals it up, and about 5 minutes later, Riolu's finally healed and wants to come along. So when Riolu comes along, they're like, yeah! So when Riolu comes, it's pretty good. I'm gonna go over Riolu's level and moveset. Riolu is a level 16 Riolu with moves Vacuum Wave, Force Palm, Circle Throw, and Final Gambit. So yeah, that's his moveset. Nah, screw Final Gambit and screw Circle Throw and Final Gambit. It's gonna be Power Up Punch. And that's it, actually. It doesn't know all 4 moves yet. Alright, fine. I'm gonna give it a random move. It's gonna get... it's gonna get Final Gambit. Actually, no, it's gonna get Circle Throw. No, I think I'm gonna give it Ice Punch. Ice Punch Surge is really good. So, when he picks it up, he says, Riolu, do you want to come along on my journey? And Riolu agrees. He puts the thing in the Pokeball and returns it in. And he says, alright, I caught a Riolu! So he goes on to the second island, training up Riolu a little bit. And I mean out of nowhere, they go, Team Skull is trying to bully a Mantike, but then he says, Riolu, you want your revenge? And he goes, and then he says, alright, use Final Gambit! I'm kidding, he doesn't say that, because Riolu will immediately be knocked out. He says, alright, Vacuum Wave! Riolu shoots a giant Vacuum Wave, sending Team Skull flying. He's like, are you okay, Mantike? And then they walk back with him on his way to Kaku's boat. When he heads there, Lily, him, and How walk over, and they head to Akala Island. And that's gonna be part 1. I'm kidding, it's not over yet. This is gonna be a full series. So the next island would be Akala, of course, and they'd head there. Immediately meeting Olivia and Mallow. Lily, knowing Mallow from the Pokemon school, says, hey, Mallow! And Mallow says, oh, hey, Lily! Hey, Nebby! Hey, Nebby! Hey, guys! So basically, they would all walk, Christian would be walking up with How, the 3 of them walking up to the hotel to go check what's there, and 2 British Kalos people come over and they challenge him. One is named Dexio, and the other one is, really, I don't know the other one's name. So basically, they would go, and they'd say, I want a battle. And he's like, alright. He says, Riolu! And she immediately sends out her Glaceon. She says, Glaceon, go! I can't do a British accent, so I'm gonna try my own. Glaceon, go! Sorry, British people, if I have offended you. He says, alright, Riolu, vacuum wave! He shoots a vacuum wave, hitting the thing head on, and he says, alright, force palm! And then he says, alright, the power up punch! But then Glaceon freezes him, and he says, alright, break through it, and use the best move you've got! Circle throw! So then when it's about to use takedown on Riolu, he grabs its shoulders and kicks it up in the air, knocking the Glaceon out, defeating it for good. He'd say, alright! Let's go! So basically this would, so they'd head to Paniola Town, start Christian House first trial. But there, they'd see something else. A lonely Poplio. No, I'm kidding, it's not a lonely Poplio. It's a lonely Froakie, whose color looks like it's sick. And it's just walking around asking for help. It's going, Frow, Frow. He says, oh my god, Froakie, are you okay? She says, what is it? And he says, it's a Froakie. He picks it up and says, I'm gonna head to the Pokemon Center to see where it's from. He takes the Froakie to the Pokemon Center and says, Nurse Joy, do you know where this Froakie is from? And she says, that Froakie, that's from Kalos. How did it get here? Must have snuck on a boat or something. That's what House said. And he's like, makes sense. And he says, would you like to take it on your journey? And he says, sure, I'd love to take it on my journey. You ready, Froakie? We're gonna be doing some hardcore training. Froakie agrees and he says, Frow! And they immediately feel a bond, just like Riolu and Thing have. And yeah, basically on the island, he's training all of them. He's got 4 Pokemon. He's got Rockruff. He's got Froakie. He's got Torracat. He's even got. Alright, I forgot who my other team member was. So it's Rockruff. Oh yeah, Riolu. He's already got a Torracat, a Rockruff, a Riolu, a Froakie. He's like, alright, welcome to the team. So let me get some leveling. Torracat is level 20. Rockruff is about level 19. I'd say Riolu is about level 18. Froakie at level 15. Right about to evolve, and he says, alright, let's battle. Let's do some hardcore training. He heads up to a mountain and then starts to train them. He says, alright, Froakie versus Riolu. Start! And he says, so what moves do you... what kind of moves are those? That is intensely strong. You know, you already know Water Pulse, Cut, Double Team, Night Slash? Is that even possible? Wait, no, I read it wrong. He doesn't know Night Slash. He knows Aerial Ace. Never mind. He says, alright, just making sure. So immediately he says, alright, use Water Pulse, Froakie. Riolu, Vacuum Wave. So they start training for a couple of hours, and when that hour's over, Froakie starts evolving into Frogadier, and then it does. He's like, already? I just met the thing. Why is it already evolving? No matter. It's still awesome! So basically, Froakie and, so we now have a Frogadier, a Torracat, a Riolu, a Rockruff, and a Frogadier. I'm pretty sure I already said that, I don't care. Moving on to the water trial. He is a ginormous, he doesn't have a giant weakness to water, so when he comes, he meets the Wishy-Washy, and he's like, so you're the totem Wishy-Washy. I'm kidding. I ain't skipping out on something. So immediately, Lily, Christian, and Hal would walk up, and they see an edgy boy. They see an edgy boy with blonde hair, and she's like, oh, Gladion? Out of nowhere, Gladion turns around, and she's like, who knows my name? He's like, what? Lily? And Hal's like, you two know each other? Then he says, wait a minute. And Christian says, duh, Hal. They obviously look the same. Obviously. They're plus they kind of have the same hairstyle a little bit. And their hair color's identical. And they have the same color eyes. He's like, God, well, I didn't know. He's like, I know you didn't. That's the point. He's like, whatever. All right, Hal. So he's like, all right, Gladion. He's like, hey, Gladion. And he's like, hello. So you guys are my friends with my sister. And Hal and Christian are like, huh? Sister? And he's like, yeah, Lily never told me about you. And they're like, nope. He's like, Lily. And she goes, I don't want to tell anyone about our family, alright? That's my best Lily impression. So basically, he'd say, people who are with my sister, I need to see how strong they are, to see if they're willing enough to protect her if she's ever attacked. So Christian says, I'll battle. I don't care. I'm bored. So he sends out Type Null immediately, and he says, alright, Frogadier, cut! He cuts it. And he's like, alright! Out of nowhere, it turns into a Zorua, and then he says, Snarl! Huh? He says, jump! And then he says out of nowhere, jump, Frogadier! Frogadier jumps out of the way, and then says, Aerial Ace! Kicking him, sending him flying. He's like, phew, we did it. And the Zora is knocked out. He's like, wow, you're strong. He says, how about my partner? No! And Lily is not traumatized by it, because she's like, oh, hi, Null. And Null's all happy because he sees Lily. And then he says, alright, you want to bring out your partner? I'll do the same. Let's go, Torracat. And he goes, yeah! Says he, and then they start, and he says, Crush Claw! And he says, Flame Charge! Torracat dodges it. Dodges the Crush Claw and hits it with a Flame Charge, sending him up in the air. He says, Double Kick! Smacking it down twice. And he's like, alright! Let's go, Torracat! Fire! Now I wish I could have said Fire Blast, but that doesn't exist yet. He says, Fire Fang! Biting Type Null, beating it. It's like, yeah, we did it, we did it. I'm gonna give him Cannon Gladion team, so he's still gonna have Umbreon and Lycanroc. He sends out his Lycanroc next, and he's like, this is my Lycanroc. He says, go! Rockruff! He sends out his Rockruff, and then immediately Rockruff is like, Rockruff! And Gladion's Lycanroc's like, Rock! And he's like, use Rock Throw! And he'd say, Stone Edge! Punching the ground, defeating Rockruff in a single blow. And then he'd sweep the rest of Christian's team. He's like, dang it, how are you this strong? He's like, well, I've done years of training. He's like, god damn. Whatever. Want to come watch me and Hal do our first trials? He's like, oh, so you're doing the island challenge? And he said, Christian, this is our second. And he's like, oh, shoot, whatever. So they go on with their journey, and they're right next to a brand new season. There. Guys, give me a second. This thing might be bad. Alright, it's not bad. So, basically, this would be a pretty easy trial for Hal, but Christian, on the other hand, he struggles a little bit. He says, alright, I have not that good of an advantage, so what am I gonna do? He says, alright, well, I'll just use Riolu, because he's probably the only one on my team who can actually deal damage to this thing. He says, let's go, Riolu! And he says, Riolu, Vacuum Wave! Riolu blasts it with a Vacuum Wave, sending it flying. He says, alright, here we go, now Force Palm! Force Palming it into the ground. And then he'd jump up and say, another one! Force Palm! Knocking it out immediately, getting the Watery MZ. Moving on to the Fire. So they go, and Hal, Christian, and Gladion, and the Mass Royal would all participate. But right before that, they run into a route with a little Vulpix being beat up by Team Skull. It's in a lowland one. He says, hey, back off! And he says, Frogadier, Water Pulse! Frogadier! And then they say, you want to battle us, Gladion? He says, you want to battle us? Let's go! It's a 3-on-3. He says, let's go! He says, you're done! You're dead meat! He says, alright, Frogadier, cut all of them. Frogadier creates this little blade and cuts through all of them, beating them immediately. Picking up the Vulpix and says, well, I kind of have too many team members already. He's like, Hal, you want it? And she's like, and when Hal says, sure, Vulpix shoots Ice at his face and says, and then walks over and starts rubbing against and goes next to Lily. And he's like, well, I guess Lily gets it. And he's like, shoot. Dang, it's not fair. And he's like, come on, Hao. You have most of your team. You have a Pichu, you have a Dartrix, you actually have an Eevee, my guy. Oh yeah, I do. He's like, yeah, so don't complain. He's like, fine. Not fair. And he says, alright, whatever. So let's go on. Gladion's like, oh, Hao, you have an Eevee? So do I. Well, it's not really an Eevee anymore. It's an Umbreon. And Gladion's like, Umbreon? He's like, I met Umbreon when I was a kid. It was literally an Eevee beat up. He's like, oh, that's sad. So when they do the Royal, pretty much, they'd all tie and stuff. And I'll be right back, guys. Back. Moving out. So now, we're going to go with the fire trial. Christian will pass this with ease with this Rockruff. And then Hao would probably struggle a little bit, but then win with his Vaporeon. Now, Hao would probably have a fun time in this battle. He'd be like, and he'd be like, let's go. And then he's like, alright, well, it should be fun. And he's like, yes! So they go to have fun. They go have a party in celebration of Hao, Christian, and Gladion. Gladion actually wants to participate. And they all have a feast at the Malasada shop. They don't have a feast, they just have some Malasada to celebrate. And that's basically it for that one. Moving on to the grass trial. I'm going to be doing Akala Island, and that's it for now. Next part will be Ula Ula and Aether Foundation. The next will be, after that will be Pony Island and the final part. So they go to do the grass trial, and while Christian immediately destroys the grass trial with his Torracat. He's like, well, that was easy, a little too easy. Hao goes in, he has a little difficulty, but then he wins at the end. He's like, grass types are not my specialty. And Dartrix just pokes him. He's like, what? He's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. He's like, alright, I'm ready. He's like, what are you ready for? And he's like, I'm ready for the grand trial. So let me name the levels. Christian's Torracat is about a level, I'd say about level 30 almost. He's about level 29. Christian's Riolu's about level 29, I'd say. The Frogadier's about 29, and the Rockruff is a little lower because he hasn't got much battle experience. Good house. Alright, look, it's level 29. It hasn't evolved yet because I want to make mine just like Ash's, where it evolves after the grand trial. You'll see. So basically, Christian would absolutely wreck the water trial. Not water trial, the rock trial with his Frogadier, winning. And it's a double battle, which is Probopass and Lycanroc versus Ash's versus Christian's. I'll be back. Give me a second. Guys, I am back. So he'd walk up to the Runes of Life, and Rockruff would start howling. He'd go, "Rawr!" and he'd turn into a dusk form, Lycanroc. rock. And he's like, cool. So he'd leave Akkala and he'd meet Faba, and Faba would tell him to come to the Grand Pummel, and that's for the next part. I'll see you guys in the next part. Oof. Wait, sorry. Let's do that again. And that's